Welcome to the latest roundup of news and polls from Ipsos MORI. And in our latest update, the main concern in Britain remains the coronavirus, with 3/4 of us describing it as the key problem facing the country. And Brexit, although there only concerns 45% of the British today, and both those issues really dominate our concerns and indeed much of our news. But what's interesting is that when we look at some of the other issues that we ask people about every month, concern about the National Health Service, despite it being the year of COVID, has actually fallen to the lowest level since 2012. Concern about immigration is now as low as it was when Tony Blair first became Prime Minister back in the last century. This is an incredibly low level of anxiety compared to just a few years ago. Some of that is because Brexit means for many people that immigration will be reduced. Some of it is because immigration is also just reducing, at least from the EU. But it's just so dramatic to see the difference. And then finally, partly because of lockdown, because everybody's at home, so burglary at least is rather more difficult. And indeed, GBH and other sorts of crimes might be a little bit more difficult with fewer people around. We've seen the lowest ever spontaneous level of concern about crime and law and order that Ipsos MORI has ever measured since we started asking this question on a monthly basis in 1974. Overall, in terms of politics, the parties we haven't really seen a shift in attitudes to the parties. Rishi Sunak remains the most favourably regarded politician in Britain. His ratings are drifting down, but the extension of the coronavirus job support scheme to the end of March has certainly helped him. The Prime Minister remains relatively unpopular, with 49% of people saying they're unfavourable to him, and he's sort of neck and neck in terms of the proportion who say they like him, about the same as Keir Starmer, who's on 32%. But Keir Starmer still has a lot of people who've yet to make up their mind about him. In Scotland, Boris Johnson is very unpopular, and only 19% of people there say that they feel he's handling the pandemic well. And in contrast, Nicola Sturgeon gets 3/4 of Scots saying she's doing a good job, which in a way is ironic, because of course the way the Scots and the English have been handling the pandemic isn't really that different, or certainly not different enough to reflect the difference in the scores. But it just shows how unpopular Boris Johnson is there, how unpopular the Conservative Party is, and of course explains the recent finding that we had that 58% of the Scots would now vote for independence. So some real challenges as we head to the Holyrood elections next May. When we look at what people think the government should prioritise, people's health or the economy, overall, many more people think that we should have more restrictions on public events, workplaces and travel, and only 17% think we should prioritise the economic health of the country. So public is staying broadly supportive of government measures, despite the relative unpopularity of the government. But the public is supportive of doing what it takes to suppress the virus. And overall, if only 14% say that the national lockdown is too strict, 39% of people are currently saying that it's not strict enough. I don't know quite what they had in mind. I suppose we could shut all the schools as well. But certainly the public supports measures to control the virus, despite a lot of noise on social media about it all being too much. Overall, in terms of what people feel comfortable doing at the moment, we've got 6 out of 10 people saying they're comfortable shopping in supermarkets, 12% so they've already just gone back to using them as before. Going to see GPs, that's fine. Meeting with people outside their household, most people are comfortable with that. But lots of anxiety about going to bars and restaurants, so we'll see when they reopen, using public transport, and of course in our big cities, numbers are still massively lower. And going abroad, I'm afraid if you're in the travel business, 53% say they're not comfortable taking a holiday abroad. So even as we unlock, eventually, many people are going to be cautious about returning to spending money on hospitality and on travel. And when we look at the vaccine, which is coming over the hill, every week we hear now about a new vaccine, which is turning out to be successful, whether it's Moderna, AstraZeneca or Pfizer. One of the things that we've observed during the course of 2020 is a fall in the proportion of people who say that they believe recommended vaccines are beneficial. Down in Britain from 83% to 74%, down in America from 80% to 63%, down in Italy. So overall, vaccine hesitancy seems to be increasing, and there's going to be a big selling job during the course of 2021 as the government tries to roll out vaccines for the whole population. If you're interested in what else has changed during the course of 2020, and there are many big impacts on health, on brands, on purpose in business, and also a lot of things that haven't changed, do look at our webinar on Global Trends 2020 Beyond the Pandemic. There's a link to it here. Well worth a look, though I say so myself because I was delivering it. And elsewhere this month, we've looked at the consequences of downward social mobility. We look a lot at upward social mobility, but what about the people who go backwards? We've looked at how news consumption has changed during 2020 and, of course, the journey of social media data and how you can use that in your research. All that and much more. Thank you.